Today we have some absolutely insane news because Marvel Tōkon is getting an official comic book, and at the same time, a lot of cover variants for other comic books as well are going to be connected to Tōkon as a game. And it might be in some way or form, maybe hinting at characters that might make it into the base roster or even as DLC. So we're gonna cover it and discuss about it to, keep the speculation going for the roster that is always super fun to do, and it can get very crazy very quickly. Like and subscribe if you want to support the channel and see more Marvel Tōkon content on it. Thank you for all the support, and now let's get into it. And the information that we have essentially is that Marvel Tōkon is getting a comic book, and it's called Marvel Tōkon First Strike. We have already a couple of covers for the comic that look really cool. They follow, of course, the Arc System Works aesthetic that they are giving to the characters. This kind of like manga-style Marvel characters, right? And on top of that, the news article tries to explain this idea that it is like a reimagined Marvel universe. And in the case that you don't know about it, Marvel actually gave the Marvel Tōkon like as a video game, right? They gave its own universe to it, which is called Earth 358. If I'm not mistaken. So everything that happens in Tōkon, in the lore, the story, it's unique to the game. It's not dependent on other comics or maybe the movies and things like that. And that's really important for the development of the narrative in the context of the game, right? And the thing that is really interesting about this news article and what's going on is that there's new art, for example, for many of the characters because they are variant covers for other comics. And Marvel is gonna use 20 different comic book covers that are variants based in Marvel Tōkon or other comic books that are present within the Marvel universe. But the thing is, all of this gets super interesting really quickly because if you take a look at the art of the variant covers in the website, they're obviously just kind of like a render of the character and the overall like Tōkon aesthetic that the game has, right, with the background and all of that, and they just look like a specific piece of each character in the roster. And if you start taking that into account and then you look into all the comics that are gonna get a variant cover, there is actually comics that have characters that are not in the game or they have not been announced at all, even though you have ones that are already in or somewhat connected, like you have Captain America comics, Iron Man comics, Uncanny X-Men, X-Men United, Avengers Armageddon. All of that stuff is in some way or form present in the game or related to it at the minimum, right? But then you have, for example, a couple of numbers for Moon Knight that are gonna get variant covers. Then you have a number of Deadpool, of Wade Wilson Deadpool, that is going to get a variant cover. You have one for Thor as well. And you even have one that is to be announced. It doesn't even have a name yet or a character attached to it. So it is very, very interesting that the overall options for the variant covers are so simple and they're just this render of the character and the Marvel Tōkon aesthetic. And then you're telling me that Moon Knight, Deadpool, and Thor are also getting a variant cover, and we don't even have them in the game. I think that that's a very sus thing. It could be potentially kind of like a hint that those characters are gonna make it into the base roster or even as DLC because these comics are not coming out at the same date that the game is, right? So there's maybe a chance that the characters that are on the list with potential variant covers could be somewhat related to the roster of the game. But what if everything gets even crazier? Because if we take a look at information around the Moon Knight 7 comic that is gonna get a Marvel Tōkon variant cover, there's already a bit of information about it online, and it says that Moon Knight is gonna team up with the Midnight Suns, and it's gonna be Daredevil, Ghost Rider, and Clea. So what if, for example, the overall kind of like Midnight Suns theme of this comic has some representation in Tōkon, even though Tōkon is its own universe, like I said before, it's not dependent on the comics or the movies. What if there is some inspiration on this, new storyline of Moon Knight and the Midnight Suns that has Daredevil, Clea, and Ghost Rider on it? But now, obviously, people take all of this with a big grain of salt. At the end of the day, it's just a speculation. Even if we have the information about the comic book, right, for Tōkon, and also how Tōkon is going to be an inspiration for many variant covers of other comics, that doesn't mean that all the characters in those comics are going to make it into the roster. That's just not the case. There is other video games, that have gotten promotional material with stuff that never makes it into the actual game. I think that even happened with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, if I'm not mistaken. Like that game also had promotional comics or things like that, and not all the characters made it into the game. It could be related to the fact that MVCI was not the biggest hit. Of course, it was kind of like a flop, commercially speaking, or at least much less successful than Capcom and Marvel were expecting. And at the same time, it probably had some DLC that never made it into the game because of that. But The same case can be for Tōkon, even if it is a big hit, because you never know if all of this stuff is actually going to make it into the game. Now, I would say if you're super critical about it and you think about it with a little bit of perspective, Moon Knight and Deadpool can very easily still make it into the base roster, and they're gonna get variant covers based on Tōkon, because Moon Knight is a character that makes a ton of sense for the Ghost Rider team. He's a part of the Midnight Suns. He's getting that new Midnight Suns team in the new comic, so it is not something weird to think or assume that Moon Knight could get a slot alongside Ghost Rider in that team. It just makes a ton of sense. And the same case for Deadpool. Those characters are both eccentric outlaws or eccentric, anti-hero characters, which is what the developers said the Ghost Rider team is gonna be. So of course, some of the characters can make it, others maybe not. Then the case of Thor is really interesting, because Thor is probably not gonna make it in the base roster like 100%, because we already have the Avengers, and if Thor is not a part of the Avengers, he's probably just not gonna make it into the base roster, and that's it. He's not gonna be a villain, and he's probably not gonna be like a weird, eccentric version of the character, right? So if all the characters that actually have variant covers are gonna make it into the game at some point, then that means that Thor is gonna be DLC. If that is the case, and Thor could very easily be Season 1 DLC, he's gonna sell really well. It's an extremely popular character, so I wouldn't be surprised if Thor is actually one of the first new characters for the game after launch. But again, take everything with a big grain of salt. It's just a speculation around information that we got about the game. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about, kind of like as an extra portion of Marvel Tōkon news for this video, is that Combo Breaker is happening this weekend, which is a giant fighting game event, and highly likely there's gonna be new footage of the game and the characters if they let people record at the venue, because there's gonna be a lot of people trying the game out, and I know of other content creators that try to cover Tōkon a lot that are gonna be there playing the game, trying to put new footage out. So follow those, creators if you want to see that footage. There's probably going to be a ton. And there's also the new, moveset card for Black Panther already online with all the special moves and stuff. It looks like she's going to be pretty versatile. Like, at first I thought she was going to be more mix-up heavy, and she just seems like, can do anything. So that's pretty good news if you like that type of character. She's probably going to be really, really fun to play. So that will be kind of like everything that is going on with Tōkon at the moment. The comic, how it can relate to maybe new characters making it into the game, and all, the characters that have not been announced that are getting the variant covers. Then you have Combo Breaker as an event this weekend, and people trying the new build of the game, and Black Panther footage and all of that. And then the last thing would be that Summer's Games Fest and also a new Sony State of Play is going to happen very soon. And at those two events, there could be very easily new Marvel Tōkon trailers. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you want to support the channel or you want to see more content for Marvel Tōkon, and see you on the next one. Take care.